After the SATs, my adopted sister got into a community college, and I got a full ride to Stanford. My dad bought her a house as a reward, but I was the one kicked out of the house. Sarah flaunted the deed in my face, grinning. Amy, so what if you're the biological daughter? You'll never beat me. The next day, I tearfully moved into a mansion in the most expensive part of the city. This is what a real heiress deserves, ha ha ha. Sarah was the daughter of my dad's good friend. Her mom died when she was little, and when she was 10, her dad died in a construction accident. My parents felt sorry for her, so they adopted her, thinking I'd have some company. I never thought she'd try to gradually take my place, to take everything for herself. Of course, would a kid who's had a top-notch education since day one lose to some two-faced schemer who showed up halfway through? During study hall the day before the SATs, Sarah ordered boba guys on DoorDash and got a drink for everyone in class. She even bragged on the teacher's platform. After the SATs, I'll pay for our class party. Everyone below cheered and hyped her up. As things quieted down, Daisy, who sat in front of me, deliberately sniped loudly. Sarah, you're so generous. Not like some people who are rich, but wouldn't even buy everyone a few bucks worth of boba. Since middle school, Sarah had pretended not to know me at school. She was terrified my non-designer wardrobe would rub off on her. I rested my left cheek on my hand, watching these hypocrites flatter each other. When Sarah handed me my boba, she even feigned kindness. Amy, don't listen to Daisy. She just speaks her mind. Try to understand. I ignored her and rolled my eyes. I looked down to grab my test paper. Splat. The boba that was sitting securely on the desk somehow ended up all over the floor. While I was still staring at the spilled boba in a daze, Sarah was already by my side, looking aggrieved. Amy, if you hate me, just say so. There's no need for this. All the students who were buried in their homework looked up at the commotion. Daisy immediately stood up and went to Sarah's side, supporting her as if she were about to collapse. Amy, Sarah was nice enough to buy everyone boba, and not only are you ungrateful, but you also ruin her kind gesture like this. You're so heartless. Seriously? So manipulative. Sarah could go straight to Hollywood. I saw the whole class looking at her sympathetically, and knew any explanation I gave would be useless. I glanced at the security camera on the ceiling above the teacher's desk. Let's see how you're going to spin this now. If you all think I bullied her, then let's go to the office and watch the security footage. Hearing security camera, the previously delicate and wronged Sarah immediately rushed forward and grabbed my hand. Amy, the SATs are tomorrow. I don't want to make a big scene. If you don't want to apologize, then forget it. Falsely accuse someone and then play innocent? Before I could speak, a low, sarcastic male voice came from behind me. I glanced back in surprise. It took me a moment to place him. He was a transfer student who was repeating the year. Ethan. He'd always been buried in his studies, so I hadn't paid much attention to him. Sarah's scheme was exposed right in front of everyone. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she bit her lip. Ethan, don't talk nonsense. It was clearly her. Enough drama. If you have any shame, clean up this mess and get back to your desk to study. Don't stand here chirping and disturbing my sleep. Ethan cut her off impatiently. At this point, the students in the class were whispering and gossiping about Sarah. Sarah shot me a hateful glare and ran back to her seat, burying her head and sobbing. Ha ha ha. Serves her right. Seeing this, Daisy didn't dare act up anymore and quietly retreated to her seat. I covered my mouth and snickered. Talk about shooting yourself in the foot. After school, I went home. Sarah twisted the story of what happened at school and told Mom and Dad. Without even asking what happened, Dad told me at the dinner table to apologize to Sarah. Amy, how can you throw a tantrum like that? Apologize to Sarah right now. I looked up and saw Sarah giving me a defiant smirk when Mom and Dad weren't looking. The moment Dad's gaze shifted to her, she put on a teary-eyed act. Dad, maybe Amy's just stressed because the SATs are coming up. Don't blame her. Stress my butt. I got a full ride to Stanford. I'm in a great mood every day. Hearing this, Dad was even more convinced I was being unreasonable. Sarah, don't speak up for her. She's just been spoiled rotten since she was little. I calmly put down my chopsticks and bowl and replied nonchalantly, "Dad, I didn't do anything wrong." Sarah's the one twisting the truth. My dad has always been very strict with me. Because I'm their only daughter, he and Mom wouldn't allow the slightest mistake in my upbringing. They always told me not to be too willful, not to be flashy, and to be humble. But when Sarah throws princess tantrums, acts arrogant, and is bossy, they never say a word. If it weren't for the fact that her last name is Jones and mine is Miller, I'd suspect I wasn't their biological daughter. This was the first time I'd ever talked back to him like this, and I could tell he was holding back his anger. "Amy, your father means well. You can't be so headstrong." Mom came to my side and tried to comfort me in a low voice. Ever since Sarah came to our house, Mom and Dad have listened to her every word and always believed her. This time I really blew up. Ever since she came into this house, you guys always listen to her side of the story, and everything I say is wrong. I said it wasn't me, so it wasn't me. Dad finally lost it, slammed his bowl on the table, and raised his hand to hit me. I gritted my teeth and stared him down, not showing a hint of fear. In the end, he couldn't bring himself to do it. He sighed and lectured. "Amy, Dad just wants you to be a bigger person, not so petty." "Ha, a bigger person. I've been a big enough person that Mom and Dad are almost hers now." Ever since she entered the Miller family, she knew how to suck up to my parents. The things Mom and Dad said most often in my ear were, "Amy, look how well behaved Sarah is. She never makes us worry. Amy, you need to learn to be independent. Sarah lost her parents young, you need to be more understanding of her. Sarah is so good. At such a young age, she already knows how to think of us." I've heard enough of these words. In a family like this, what's the difference between having parents and not having them? They only know that Sarah doesn't have parents, and that they need to give her fatherly and motherly love. So don't I need it too? After letting Sarah leech off the Miller family for so many years, it's time for me to get back the affection that belongs to me. This was the first time in so many years that I had such a big fight with my parents. I'll deal with this little brat after the SATs. At night, I took a shower and was sleeping soundly in bed. Bang! The door was kicked open. Whoever it was, disturbing my beauty sleep, wouldn't leave this room in one piece. No need to guess, it had to be that brat. Mom and Dad happened to be on a business trip abroad tonight. She was toast. She stood before me with her arms crossed, acting all high and mighty. "Amy, didn't you get a full ride to Stanford? Why are you even taking the SATs? What are you trying to prove?" This person had completely worn out my patience. I was originally going to let her have a peaceful few days. But since she was asking for a beating, I'd grant her wish. I stretched lazily and got up, giving her a disdainful look. "Ugh, so disgusting. I'm just showing off. If I've got it, why not flaunt it?" Sarah sneered. "Amy, no matter how hard you try, Mom and Dad will only listen to me. In their eyes, you're just a spoiled brat." "Sarah, I really don't know what goes on in that head of yours. My last name is Miller, yours is Jones. The Miller family fortune will be mine sooner or later. You're not sucking up to me now, and instead, you're provoking me. You're going to regret this badly." What Sarah hated most was her last name being Jones. She had tried to subtly hint to Dad many times to change her last name to Miller, but Dad rejected it every time. Even if my dad was loyal, he wouldn't be stupid enough to let an outsider compete with his own daughter for the family inheritance. Sarah got angry from my comeback and lunged at me, trying to grab my hair. Neither she nor my parents knew. While she was taking those art classes in middle school that I had already mastered, I was learning Taekwondo. I sidestepped, grabbed her long hair, and yanked it back. "Ah, Amy, you dare hit me. I'm going to tell Mom and Dad." I pinned her to the ground and quickly slapped her twice. My palm prints immediately appeared on her fair cheeks. I'm no saintly heroine from a melodrama. It's always been me hitting others, never others hitting me. Except for my dad. Since you accuse me of hitting you even when I haven't, I might as well not lose out. You dare. Still talking tough while being pinned down. Smack. I backhanded her again. This slap is to tell you not to mess with me when I'm sleeping. Sarah wailed beneath me. Amy, I'm going to kill you. Smack. Another slap for her. You can scream your lungs out today, Mom and Dad won't come to save you. I only pulled her up after she begged for mercy. dragged her to the door and kicked her out. Door slammed. So satisfying. Force is the only way to deal with people like her. Warm-up complete. Now I can sleep well. Morning. I got up early to wash up. I put all the necessary exam materials into my bag. After getting ready, I went downstairs and saw an astonishing sight. Sarah was actually up so early, and in the kitchen no less. This girl, who hadn't lifted a finger in our house since she arrived, was making breakfast for the first time in 8 years. I glanced out the window, wondering if I should bring an umbrella. It looked like it was going to pour. Seeing me come downstairs, Sarah ran over with that swollen, smiling face. I leaned back in disgust. Her tone had also softened considerably. Amy, I made you breakfast. Let's go take the exam together after we eat. An unsolicited courtesy is either treacherous or deceitful. I squinted at the exquisite Western-style breakfast on the table. A little voice in my head told me not to eat it. She wouldn't have tampered with the breakfast, would she? Seeing me hesitate to pick up my utensils, Sarah anxiously urged me. If you don't eat soon, we'll be late. We have the SATs today. I gave her a cold side eye, and she quickly gobbled down her portion. I'm done eating. Now you can relax, right? I speared a small sausage with my fork. Sarah watched me with anticipation, wishing I would eat it immediately. Just as the sausage reached my lips, I stopped. This sausage is too greasy. I don't have an appetite. I'm not eating. Let's go to school. Smack. Sarah slammed the table in anger. Amy, don't push it. I woke up early to make you breakfast, and you dare not eat it. It seems things didn't go as she expected, and she flew into a rage. Sarah, get it straight. I'm the real heiress of this family. It's your honor to make me breakfast. I picked up the milk and held it out to her. Dare you say you haven't tampered with this food? Sarah looked at the milk, her assertiveness immediately weakening. She started putting on her pitiful, manipulative act again. Amy, I was too emotional just now. I didn't express myself well. Actually, I sincerely made you breakfast. Okay, in that case, drink this milk, and I'll let bygones be bygones. Amy, you. Sarah recoiled a few steps in fear when faced with the glass of milk. I knew this brat was up to no good. I continued to hold the milk to her lips, and she turned pale with fright. Enough. Amy, why is Dad back? Wasn't he supposed to be on a business trip for a week? I looked towards the door. Dad seemed to have rushed back. I didn't even see any luggage. He walked over and slapped the milk out of my hand onto the floor. Sarah immediately hid behind him. Tears welled up in her eyes pitifully. Dad, Amy wasn't satisfied with just swelling up my face last night. This morning, to make her happy, I specially made her breakfast, and Amy actually thought I poisoned her. Dad saw her red and swollen cheeks and immediately believed her side of the story. Amy, if Sarah hadn't posted on social media last night and we saw it, we wouldn't have known you were so heavy-handed. You're getting more and more out of line. Ha, so this was intentional, to let my parents see. I'm not the lead in some sob story, dumb enough to let an outsider push me around. Sarah, stop playing the victim in front of Dad. If you didn't poison it, then you eat my portion. She's such a drama queen, this brat. I pulled her out from behind Dad and pushed her head towards the plate of breakfast. She screamed in terror. Dad, save me. Amy, what have I done to offend you? Just because I told Dad you bullied me at school, you have to treat me like this. Amy, what are you doing? You dare to do this right in front of your father. My dad pulled me away, his hand swinging towards me. Miss, please stop fighting. You have the SATs today. If you don't leave now, you'll be late. Mr. Lee, the family driver, appeared just in time, and Dad's hand stopped midair. He glared at me, looking like he was both furious and disappointed. Amy, after your SATs are over, move out of this house. You need to go out and toughen up. You're too willful and unreasonable. I didn't argue, just felt incredibly disappointed by Dad's favoritism. I grabbed my bag and walked straight out the door. After the SATs, I packed all my clothes and called a moving company. I wouldn't stay in this house a second longer. Sarah came into my room, arrogant and haughty. She dangled a property deed in front of me, looking smug. Amy, so what if you're the biological daughter? You'll never win against me. Dad said, whether I get into college or not, He'll arrange everything for me in the future. This house is his graduation gift to me. I pretended to be devastated and walked towards her. Sarah, you're so lucky. I have nothing. Even if I got a full ride to Stanford, what's the use? Sarah thought her scheme had really gotten to me. She leaned in close to my ear smugly. Amy, even though you didn't get any reward, you still got into Stanford. You can rent a place when you go to college, ha ha ha. Looking at her gloating, if she knew this house was originally left to her by her own father, she'd probably flip out. A month before the SATs, I overheard Mom and Dad talking about this house in the study. This house was bought outright with money Sarah's father saved up by working himself to the bone on construction sites. Before he died, he left the deed with my dad, to be given to her when she turned 18. Although the location wasn't great, her biological father really loved her and made sure she had a backup plan before he passed. I didn't expect Sarah to be so heartless. To become a wealthy heiress, she wouldn't even keep her own last name. And her biological father was a taboo subject that couldn't be mentioned. She only acknowledged her identity as the Miller family's eldest daughter. Her father's status as a worker would only make her feel ashamed. Looking at her like this, I just found it laughable. I didn't want to waste any more words on her. I'm moving to my big mansion. When Grandpa found out I'd been kicked out, he immediately gave me the most expensive villa in the city. He said my getting into Stanford brought honor to our ancestors, and this was just the tip of the iceberg. In the future, all of the Miller family's assets would be mine. When I arrived at the villa, the servants were all lined up to welcome me. Isn't this a bit much? I don't usually like such a high-profile entrance, but what can I say, my family's rich. Can't refuse, can I? Aha. Welcome home, miss. At the end of the line of servants stood a little old man with white hair, wearing a suit and smiling kindly. That's my grandpa. I dropped my luggage and ran towards him. Grandpa. Oh my dear granddaughter. You seem to have grown taller again. I pouted. Seriously, we just saw each other last week. How could I change so quickly? Grandpa laughed heartily and led me inside. The villa was huge, decorated in a style that blended Chinese and Western elements. Solemn and luxurious. Grandpa first took me to sit in the pavilion. He had the servants bring some of my favorite pastries. I hadn't had these pastries in so long. Grandpa still doted on me the most. My heart felt warm. I gobbled down several pieces. Seeing this, Grandpa frowned. Did your parents mistreat you? Tell Grandpa. Grandpa will go teach your dad a lesson. I chugged down the tea. Pouting, I mimicked Sarah with teary eyes and threw myself into Grandpa's arms. Grandpa, they're all bullying me. I told Grandpa everything that had happened, down to the last detail. After hearing it, Grandpa angrily slammed his teacup down. Well, I never, Tom Miller. You don't dote on your own daughter, but you help an outsider bully her. I sobbed by his side, secretly glancing at Grandpa's expression. Looks like someone's in for a world of hurt. Grandpa comforted me tenderly. My dear granddaughter, if they don't dote on you, Grandpa will. Tomorrow, Grandpa will throw you a grand graduation party. I nodded obediently, tearfully grabbing a pastry and stuffing it into my mouth. Grandpa decided to host my graduation party at this garden villa. He invited his business partners, close friends, and relatives to attend. This villa is huge. The front garden alone is the size of a soccer field, and the backyard is a Chinese-style garden. Today I woke up in a king-sized bed and opened my endless walk-in closet. Ahem. Just kidding, using hyperbole. I woke up to the sound of commotion downstairs. Opening the window, I saw all the servants busy preparing for tonight's banquet. The thought of Sarah's face when she sees I'm the owner of this villa tonight made me secretly delighted. I picked up a dress, thinking it was too flashy. I chose a simple floral dress instead. I fiddled with it in front of the mirror. This looked more comfortable. I casually tied my hair into a bun and grabbed my handbag. I still had money on my card from the beauty salon, so I decided to go pamper myself. This beauty salon is a popular spot for wealthy women, and is therefore well known in the city. Some rich young ladies also come here because of its reputation. Last time, my mom brought me and Sarah here once, and even got us each a card and put some money on them. I don't come very often, but Sarah comes a lot. Anyway, if the card ran out of money, she would just sweet-talk my mom, and my mom would top it up for her. She really eats our food and uses our things, and still wants to step on my head and replace me. As soon as I walked in, the staff inside enthusiastically came up to offer water and arrange a seat for me. Miss Miller, what services would you like today? I flipped through their service menu. Well, who do we have here? What brings you to this fancy salon? I looked up and saw Daisy and Sarah slowly descending the stairs. Daisy's loud voice echoed through the first floor, and everyone's eyes turned to them. The two of them walked up to me, full of themselves. Daisy had a sharp, cunning face, clearly an arrogant and bossy type. Sarah, on the other hand, looked like an innocent flower. Most people would think she was the victim. I closed the service menu and smiled at them. What a coincidence. Are you two here for a beauty treatment too? Sarah hunched her shoulders and hid behind Daisy, nodding, as if I was going to eat her. Such an actress, what a drama queen. Seeing Sarah like this, Daisy thought I had bullied her privately again. She stepped forward, blocking Sarah, and gave me a fierce warning look. Amy, don't think you can bully Sarah just because she's a good girl. If you dare touch her, you'll have to go through me first. Her confidence made me laugh. I stood up and immediately noticed the familiar necklace around her neck. This necklace was a cheap gift from Sarah's biological father for her birthday. It was also her father's only memento besides the house. I didn't expect her to despise it so much that she'd casually give it to someone else. She never wore it, only liking the various designer necklaces and bracelets my parents gave her. I reached out to touch the necklace on her chest, and Daisy immediately jumped back several steps, afraid I would break it. What are you doing? You can't afford to replace this necklace if it breaks, even if you have money. Her naive words made me chuckle. Ah, what did you say? This necklace from a dead person? I wouldn't dare touch it. I wiped my hands in disgust. Hearing dead person, Daisy's face instantly turned pale, and she glanced at Sarah with some suspicion. Sarah, flustered, scolded me, her voice trembling slightly. Amy, you're being too harsh. This was definitely the strongest thing she could muster to maintain her image of a delicate, innocent flower. If no one else were around, who knows how much worse she could curse. Today, right here in front of everyone, I'm going to expose her act. Let's see how she can keep pretending after this. Sarah, you gave away the keepsake your own father gave you just like that. Is that polite? Everyone in the salon gasped and started pointing fingers at her. How could this woman be like this? Yeah, so cruel and pretentious. You really can't tell, can you? You can't judge a book by its cover. Who knows how dark it is inside? Seeing everyone's reaction, and Daisy's incredulous gaze, she frantically rushed forward and shoved me. Her chest heaved violently, her wide eyes filled with angry tears. Amy, why are you spreading such lies? My father is the CEO of Apex Group. You're cursing my father, I'll kill you. She ran forward, weakly pummeling me with her fists, then fell to the ground herself, playing the pitiful victim. I didn't even move an inch, and she just sat herself on the floor. I looked down at her crying and wailing. Sarah, just stop pretending. Your dad died on a construction site. The CEO you're talking about is my dad. You've been mooching off my family for 8 years. You've been desperately trying to be obedient and well-behaved in front of my parents because you're afraid of being kicked out, right? I'm different. I'm a genuine, bona fide rich kid. No matter how much I act out, I don't have to be afraid. Amy didn't expect that I, who never mentioned my family background in front of outsiders, would say this today. Daisy loudly questioned Sarah. Sarah, is what she's saying true? Sarah, in a last-ditch effort, grabbed Daisy's skirt. Don't listen to her nonsense, I'm the real one. A staff member nearby couldn't stand it anymore and directly exposed her. Little sister, how can you lie? Mrs. Miller is a frequent customer at our store. She said you're their adopted daughter. Besides, your last name is Jones, not Miller. Now that there was a witness, Daisy's gaze towards Sarah turned to contempt. Daisy pulled her hand away, yanked the necklace from her neck, and threw it in Sarah's face. I must have been blind to consider you a friend. Daisy, realizing she had been used and deceived, and had made a fool of herself in such a place, stormed out angrily. Sarah, red-faced and mortified, took the opportunity to chase after her out the door. I smiled as I watched the two of them run off, then comfortably sat back down on the sofa and picked up the service menu to continue browse. What kind of lowlife thinks she can get beauty treatments at the same place as me? By the time I got back to the villa, it was already 4:30. Grandpa had the maid quickly help me change into a dress. It was a strapless pink gown that I loved. No frills, just a simple mermaid silhouette. It really suited my style. Grandpa still knows me best. When most of the guests downstairs had arrived, Grandpa came up to escort me down to meet them. He also took this opportunity to introduce me to his business partners. As soon as I reached the first floor, I saw Sarah arm in arm with my dad, exchanging pleasantries and compliments with various relatives and friends. "Tom, is this Amy? She's grown so much." The person asking was my grandfather's cousin's son. He lived out of town, and I remember I was only 9 the last time I saw him. Sarah hadn't joined our family back then. Hearing this, Sarah's bright smile instantly dimmed a little. My dad didn't notice her expression, and continued talking to the other person. "No, this is Sarah, she..." My cousin uncle looked like he understood. "Oh, I get it, second child." Speechless. My cousin uncle's eyesight is also a bit problematic. Shouldn't a second child born after I turned 10 be only 7 or 8 years old now? Sarah's ghostly appearance doesn't look like a 7 or 8-year-old child either. Oh right, she's only 5 feet 1 inch. Still, she doesn't look like an 8-year-old. Hearing second child, Sarah's face turned even uglier. I deliberately led Grandpa towards them. Before my dad could finish explaining Sarah's background, my cousin uncle saw me and Grandpa approaching and immediately came over to toast. "Cousin uncle, it's been so many years. You're much healthier than my dad. You don't even bring your dad to see me. In our generation, it's just me and your dad, 2 old bones still alive. Ha ha ha, next month when the kids are on vacation, I'll bring him to see you then." My cousin uncle tilted his head and made a funny face at me, teasing me like when I was little. "This is Amy, right?" I tactfully stepped forward and greeted him as cousin uncle. My cousin uncle frowned in confusion, pointing his finger at Sarah. "Your sister doesn't look like you." Grandpa slapped him hard on the back. "You rascal, are you drunk? Amy is an only child, the pride of our family, guaranteed admission to Stanford." Grandpa glanced disdainfully at Sarah. That one Tom adopted from outside, not a Miller child. My cousin uncle understood Grandpa's meaning and let out a knowing "Oh." 11. My dad pulled Sarah over and formally introduced her. Yes, Sarah's dad was my good buddy. After he passed away unexpectedly, he entrusted his child to my care. Sarah's face was ashen at this point, barely managing a smile. She quietly said, "Cousin uncle, Grandpa." Grandpa immediately and sternly rejected her address. "Hold on, I'm not your grandpa. You can't just go around claiming relatives." Then he turned to me with a doting smile. "Amy is my dear granddaughter, and she brings honor and glory to the Miller family." Sarah's hand, gripping her skirt, trembled slightly, and the smile on her face froze. In front of everyone, I feigned magnanimity and tried to persuade Grandpa. "Grandpa, Sarah has been with our family for so long, she's practically a Miller now. Please don't fuss over these things." Relatives and friends all praised me for being sensible and understanding. My dad looked at me with a gratified expression. "Dad, Amy is right. Don't be like this, we're all family." Grandpa angrily slammed his cane on the floor. "Tom, you don't dote on your own daughter. Giving a house to an outsider is one thing, but you also kicked my precious granddaughter out of the house. If I hadn't given her this villa, would you have let your own biological daughter sleep on the streets?" When my dad and Sarah heard that this villa was mine, they both stared with wide, unbelieving eyes. My dad felt that Grandpa had spoiled me rotten. Sarah, on the other hand, was resentful and jealous. "Dad, how could you do this? I just wanted her to grow up. That's why I let her go out and be independent. Besides, that house was originally Sarah's father's. He asked me to keep it for her before he died." When Sarah heard that this house wasn't a gift from Dad, a flash of resentment crossed her eyes. But she quickly composed herself and immediately put on a wronged, tearful expression. "Grandpa, if you don't like me, I'll leave immediately. I won't bother you and Amy." She deliberately raised her voice, attracting everyone's attention. Seeing that everyone wasn't gossiping about me and Grandpa, she was about to make a tearful exit. My dad grabbed her. Sarah had calculated that my dad would protect her. Dad, Sarah's parents are gone. She's a little girl all alone. Can't you accept her? This way, Amy has a sister, and you have another granddaughter. Isn't that good? Some relatives also came up to persuade my dad not to make things too ugly. But my dad was rebellious and insisted on protecting this little vixen to the end. He felt that everyone misunderstood Sarah. Grandpa once again brought up what I had told him to reprimand Sarah. Sarah, you know what kind of person you are. At such a young age, you've already learned to frame others. I imagine you won't be a pushover in the future either. Sarah was stung by Grandpa's words. Her tricks didn't work on him. She burst into tears. Grandpa, how can you be so mean? What Amy told you isn't true at all. She bullies me and hits me all day long. I can testify. It was you who framed Amy. A roguishly handsome guy stepped out from the crowd. Ethan? What's he doing at my graduation party? Ethan came up and immediately testified that Sarah was the one who pushed the boba to the ground at school last time. He also said she was arrogant and bossy at school, always claiming to be the daughter of the Apex group. My dad dislikes people who act so ostentatiously, and he was suddenly filled with disappointment towards Sarah. This time, Sarah was completely exposed, with no dignity left. But she still stubbornly denied it. I've endured enough. What more do you want from me? Do you have to push me to a dead end? If so, I don't want to live anymore. With that, she slammed her head against the table and pretended to faint. Here we go again. No blood, no nothing. I quickly pulled my dad, pretending to shout loudly. Dad, call an ambulance quickly. Her wound will heal soon if we delay. Hurry up and take her to the hospital for dozens of stitches. My dad was a bit annoyed with her. He called Mr. Lee to drag her away and send her to the hospital. All the relatives and friends saw it with their own eyes, and realized Sarah was a manipulative schemer. After this farce, I toasted Ethan with a glass of wine to express my gratitude. Then Grandpa and I exchanged a smile and continued my graduation party. 13. A few days after the graduation party, my dad went on a business trip again. Dad still let her stay out of respect for her biological father. He just wouldn't give her allowance anymore, and told her to figure things out herself. The housekeeper, Miss Chun, called me and said Sarah had been going crazy these past few days, staying in her room smashing things and screaming about revenge. Miss Chun couldn't take it anymore and wanted to quit. Miss Chun also quietly told me a huge secret over the phone. After hearing it, I first stabilized Miss Chun with triple her salary, asking her to continue keeping an eye on Sarah's every move, then report back to me. Now that Sarah hated me to the core, she would definitely get desperate and try to harm me. I called my dad's assistant. I learned that he and Mom would be back in City A in 3 days. I hung up the phone, grabbed my bag, and went to my dad's house. Today, let me serve this hot-tempered young lady. As soon as I reached the front door, I heard the sound of things smashing from the second floor, accompanied by Sarah's hoarse screams. Why, all of this should be mine. I was obedient and well-behaved. How am I inferior to that brat? Is this person crazy? Hasn't she smashed everything in the room yet? I rang the doorbell. Miss Chen opened the door, and when she saw me, she excitedly pulled me into the house. She sighed helplessly. Miss, listen. It's been like this for days. As soon as she wakes up, I only dare to carefully place her meals outside her door every day, afraid she'll hit me. I reassured her and told her not to worry. I went upstairs to Sarah's room. Inside, it sounded like a mental patient was raging. I opened the door, and Sarah's voice immediately stopped. The room was a mess, curtains drawn, lights off. She was disheveled, like a wild person from the deep mountains. A completely different person from her previous innocent appearance. I tentatively called her name to see if she was really crazy. Sarah? She turned around, her eyes filled with resentment, staring at me intently. Brat, you still dare to come? You made me lose face in front of everyone again and again. You're happy now, aren't you? Looks like she's still lucid, not crazy. This is my house, why wouldn't I dare to come? This is all your own doing for not recognizing your place. It has nothing to do with me. Her eyes were bloodshot, and she screamed that she wanted to kill me. She lunged at me, trying to choke me. But I reacted quickly and dodged her long, sharp nails. I grabbed her wrist and bent it behind her back. Sarah struggled in pain, but she wasn't as strong as me and couldn't break free. Amy, I'm going to kill you. As long as I'm alive, you won't have a good day. I turned her around and slapped her across the face. Kill me? Let's see if you have what it takes. She fell to the ground, her hateful expression not softening in the slightest. At this moment, my phone rang. I picked it up. Grandpa, you don't need to send bodyguards to follow me these few days. I don't like being too high profile. Yes, that's it. After Sarah heard my call, a cunning glint flashed in her eyes. She stood up, trembling. She took my hand and apologized in a low voice. Amy, I'm sorry. I've been in a bad mood these past few days. I was too impulsive just now and made you angry. Ha. The fish is hooked. These past 2 days, I've been deliberately going out shopping and watching movies alone. I thought someone would follow me and try to harm me, but nothing happened. Until the 3rd day, when I went to a bar with a few friends and stayed out until the early hours of the morning. Actually, I wasn't drunk, I was just faking it. This time, I could feel someone following me. There weren't many people on the street at this hour. I pretended to stumble, steadying myself against a tree by the roadside. I heard rustling footsteps behind me. It seemed like there were several people. Suddenly, a sleazy-looking man grabbed my waist from behind. His words were full of lewd teasing. Little sister, all alone so late at night? I pretended to be weak and pushed him away. Another one grabbed my shoulder from my left. Why don't you come home and play with us brothers? Let go of me. Boss, this chick looks fair and tender, probably a virgin. That's perfect. Not only do we get paid today, but we also get to pop a cherry. Ha ha ha. Before I could make a move, the headlights of a car in front flashed. The light was strong, and a few thugs rushed up, cursing. Can't you see there are people here? Driving a crappy Mercedes. What are you showing off? The person who went up suddenly went silent. A couple got out of the car. As they got closer, I recognized them. It was Mom and Dad. My mom took off her coat and quickly hugged me. My dad was so angry he immediately ordered the bodyguards to chop off the hands of those who had touched me. I deliberately screamed loudly, as if I had been traumatized. Ah, Mom, Dad, I'm so scared I don't want to live anymore. Those thugs were beaten by the bodyguards until they cried for their parents. Finally, they couldn't take it anymore and confessed the truth. Stop hitting us, brothers. We were just paid to do a job. Hearing this, my dad became even more furious. Dad always believed in amicable business dealings and never acted ostentatiously. He couldn't figure out who would want to ruin his daughter like this. He leaned down to hear the thugs reveal who was behind it all. I saw his eyes fill with rage, his fingers clenching into fists. Bring these guys back to the Miller house with me. Tonight I'm cleaning house. I shivered in Mom's arms like a frightened deer. Mom stroked my back lovingly. Amy, it's all Mom's fault for not protecting you. I'm sorry. Mom and Dad brought me home. As soon as we walked in, we saw Sarah leisurely sitting on the sofa eating fruit and watching TV dramas. Seeing Mom and Dad, she immediately put down the fruit and obediently took Mom's luggage. At this point, she hadn't noticed how terrible Mom and Dad looked. She was still being very sweet. Mom, Dad, you must be tired from your business trip these past few days. Smack. My mom slapped her hard across the face. Sarah clutched her face, bit her lower lip, and stood there stunned for a few seconds. Sarah, I can't believe I spoiled you so much, raising you to be so reckless. She lifted her head, wearing that same expression again. Mom, you guys. Why are you suddenly like this? Just then, I slowly walked out from behind my parents. When Sarah saw me, she pointed at me in shock. You're not. I wasn't gang raped by people you hired? Is that right? I finished her sentence. Seeing me safe and sound, she knew her plan had failed again. She stood there, still looking completely unremorseful. My dad angrily dragged Sarah in front of him and slapped her again. Sarah, how much do you hate Amy that you'd hire people to ruin her reputation like this? You're truly evil. Sarah still refused to admit she did it. Mom, Dad, are you mistaken? I didn't do such a thing. She came over and knelt in front of me, playing the victim. Amy, I'm kneeling before you. Can you please stop trying to frame me like this? Please let me go. Sarah really knows how to spin a tale, I'm truly impressed by her acting skills. Seeing her so stubborn, my dad had someone bring out those thugs for a confrontation. Those men were beaten black and blue. As soon as they saw Sarah, they immediately identified her. It's her. She gave us brothers $50,000 and even let us to follow this little sister for a few days. We only made a move today. Yes, it's her. I'd recognize her even if she were turned to ashes. Faced with the accusations from these men, Sarah still refused to confess and continued to cry and play the victim. Who are you? I have no grudge against you. Why are you trying to frame me? Then she came over and tugged at my dad's pant leg, desperately trying to distance herself. Dad, it really wasn't me. Someone must have put them up to this. This time, my dad wasn't swayed by her words and kicked her away. Mr. Miller, I have something I want to tell you. The housekeeper, Miss Chun, came over with a document. She handed it to my dad. Last time I saw Miss Sarah put something in the young lady's breakfast, I felt something was off. That day, I took the milk that spilled on the floor to my nephew who works at the hospital for testing. At this point, Miss Chun paused, glanced at Sarah kneeling on the floor, and continued. A large dose of rat poison was detected. After hearing this, Mom and Dad looked like they wanted to eat Sarah alive. If this were ancient times, Sarah would have died a horrible death. Sarah's body went limp, and she sat on the floor, laughing self-deprecatingly. My mom angrily went up and slapped her twice. You can still laugh. You were trying to kill someone. How can you be so evil? Mom came back crying and hugged me tightly. Amy, Mom almost got you killed. I actually listened to that wicked person's words in the past and misunderstood you. My dad also came over and stroked my back. Amy, Dad was wrong about you before. I'm sorry. Dad will make it up to you in the future. I pretended to be very touched and nodded obediently. Actually, I was the one who asked my cousin at the hospital to do the test. Last time, after I left for the SATs, I messaged Miss Chun on the way, asking her to help me keep that plate of food and milk. I thought Sarah had only put in some laxatives or something minor. I didn't expect her to be even more vicious than I imagined, actually wanting to kill me. After that, I became determined to make sure she could never win back my parents' favor. Sarah sat on the floor, laughing, and then pointed angrily at my parents. She blamed everything on my parents. You adopted me, but you wouldn't treat us equally. Why does Amy get everything, while I'm like a dog, only able to survive in this house if I make you happy? Amy forced me to do it. You brat. When my parents heard her say this, their eyes filled with disappointment. They felt she was an ungrateful wolf who would never have a grateful heart. Since that's the case, I have no choice but to reveal this final big secret. Let my parents know she wasn't this evil only after coming to our house, but that she had killed someone before she was 10. I walked up to her and looked at her coldly. Sarah still had that bratty look on her face, her eyes defiant. The evil in her heart was now fully displayed on her face. It made people want to hit her. Sarah, why don't you tell us? Was your biological father's death an accident or was it deliberate? Hearing this, Sarah's disdainful smile froze. She was indeed most afraid of this. I had Mr. Lee bring the person up. When Sarah saw this woman, she recoiled in fear. This woman was Sarah's biological father's mistress. She had kept this secret for Sarah all these years, and had also used this secret to extort a lot of money from Sarah. Sarah, do you recognize her? Sarah feigned madness, clutching her head. I don't know her. Amy, who are you trying to bring in to harm me now? I walked over to the woman. She knew what to do. This little brat, she's ruthless. When she was 10, she tampered with her dad's safety rope, causing him to fall to his death. She became an orphan, and you two would definitely adopt her, seeing as her father had saved Mr. Miller's life. Her dad used to joke that if he unfortunately passed away, he'd beg Mr. Miller to help take care of his daughter. Unexpectedly, this damn girl took it to heart and started plotting how to kill her own dad. After my parents heard this, they gasped. My mom covered her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. My dad, on the other hand, turned away in disappointment, feeling it wasn't worth it for her father. Sarah laughed even more wildly now, her eyes fierce. She quickly got up, grabbed a fruit knife from the coffee table, and stabbed her father's mistress. Her hands were covered in blood, but her face was contorted into a smile. I finally got rid of you too. She turned her face towards us. Miss Chun was terrified. The few thugs tied up to the side were also scared and crawling on the floor. Just as she was about to rush towards us, my dad called for the bodyguards. They came in and immediately pinned Sarah to the ground. Finally, they took her to the police station to await police action. 19. After this incident, Mom and Dad were no longer as strict with me as before. My dad asked me to move back home. I refused. After all, who wouldn't want to live in a big villa? A week later, I bought a bouquet of flowers to visit the woman who had been stabbed. When I arrived at her hospital room, I saw she was eating and drinking well. It seemed the stab wound wasn't that serious after all. When she saw me, she casually looked me up and down. Seeing I only brought flowers, she complained. Visiting a patient and just buying something inedible? What's the use? So rich yet so stingy. I put the flowers on the cabinet. The money has already been transferred to your card. Take the money and get as far away as possible. She placed the banana in her hand on the flowers and picked her teeth. No wonder that girl Sarah couldn't beat you. You're a ruthless one too. I chuckled softly, deliberately pressing my hand on her wound. Her expression contorted in pain. Since you already know my methods, then leave quietly. She nodded painfully. Sarah was eventually sentenced for intentional injury and murder. Her life was completely ruined. September. My college life was about to begin. Grandpa bought me another apartment in Beijing to make it easier for me to go to school. This time, someone else was going with me. Ethan? My only impressions of him were from the graduation party and the day before the SATs. I thought he was a slacker who liked to sleep and was a bit of a rogue. He was good-looking and would be the center of attention in a crowd. But what I didn't expect was that someone so laid back actually got into Stanford and in the same department as me. Grandpa even arranged for him to temporarily live in the same apartment as me. Grandpa's matchmaking intentions are a bit too eager, aren't they? Isn't he worried about a lone man and woman, that he might take advantage of me? Later I found out that this Ethan had it all planned. He first won over Grandpa, and then teamed up with Grandpa to pursue me. The night before we moved in together, we celebrated. I asked him, Ethan, when did you start crushing on me? Ethan took a sip of red wine and said with a smile, since you just started high school. Ever since you helped me fight off those thugs by the school wall. A memory suddenly flooded my mind. So it was him. The end.